Welcome everyone and good morning from Germany. Thanks for having me today. It's been an awesome event so far with tons of great talks and speakers. And I hope you still have some energy and attention left for the second day of JiraCon. I will definitely try to make the coming minutes exciting and entertaining. And before starting with today's topic, how to build meaningful relationships in Jira, I'd like to point out to the chat as well as the Q&A box on the right, where you can add your questions or vote for the ones from others that you'd love to get answered in the QA part at the end. The list is curated throughout the session by my appreciated colleague, Christian, who is my moderator this morning. Christian, do you want to say hello?
Good morning, everyone. Looking forward to the questions. See you in a minute.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So starting with the who, so I'd like to introduce myself quite short. My name is Torsten. I started as a consultant about 5 years ago at Decades, which marks my deep dive into the Atlassian ecosystem as well, and led to myself holding several certifications that allow me to call myself a Atlassian certified expert. But the primary role currently is our product management at the X Apps by Decades team. Decades is a gold marketplace as well as a gold solution partner based in the heart of Germany, a town or village called Koblenz, right in the middle between Cologne and Frankfurt, with additional office in Munich, as well as a growing department in Seville, Spain. We currently have about 10 apps, or exactly 10 apps on the marketplace, being German-based, historically coming from the on-prem side, but currently pushing to the cloud, aligning to the overall Atlassian strategy. Jira Workflow Toolbox on the upper left is currently the best rated Jira app on the Atlassian marketplace. Fun fact that we are quite proud of, and we are also proud of being awarded Staff Pick by Atlassian on a regular basis. Quite recently, we released 2 new apps based on Forge during this year's Codegeist. Another push into the cloud direction that Atlassian, pilots for all the partners as well as the customers. Today's session is about relationships, and just bring a little quote up. Good life is built with good relationships, which is admittedly probably taming towards actual people. So let's talk about the private parts, family, friends, or with business colleagues, team members, customers. However, this also applies to Jira issues, which brings us to the actual what of today's presentation. We will have a look at issue relationships in Jira, so relationships between issues. We will look closely at what they are and what they contain, and more importantly, what is missing by default. As a takeaway, I'll provide some examples how the relationships can be made smarter to ultimately increase data or process quality and reduce the manual effort and the load on your users by implementing automation features. An important note in advance, the topics covered are, as far as possible, platform agnostic, which means that the knowledge as well as the examples are applicable both on Jira Cloud as well as on-premise in the sense of data center and server. The only exception are team-managed or next-gen projects, as they've been formally called, on Jira Cloud, since those won't be covered today. When referring to the cloud, I'm referring to company-managed or classic projects. Default functionality comes in different flavors, and the first thing that might come to your mind are issue links, with a default set like relates to, blocks, etc., a list that can be extended with the specific terminology used by your team. The next thing that might come up to your mind are hierarchy levels with epic, story, and subtask when using Jira software, or more generic, the epic, standard, and subtask issue types. We'll see what the different distinction is in a couple of minutes. Beyond that, issue relationships can be derived from other pieces of information, for example, the project membership, so a common project issues belong to, or field values like that tie together different sets of issues like components, version, or the priority. However, this session will focus on the first two blocks, the issue links and the hierarchy levels. Starting with issue links, one essential part to analyze is obviously the link itself. There's a dedicated issue linking administration section where issue linking can be enabled or disabled globally. And a link basically is set up as a bidirectional pointer between two issues, A to B and vice versa. There are different so-called link types customizable through the Jira administration. And they usually consist of a readable name as well as an outward and inward description. So for example, the first one here, blocks, has an outward description blocks, and the inward description is blocked by, which is then a targeted direction. Last but not least, to actually set links or link issues between each other, users need a dedicated link issues permission. The second part is the actual relationship. So the connection can be made regardless of the issue type. Subtasks can also be linked to epics, etc. And linking in general requires the selection of a link type as well as a target issue. And then, as I said before, every link consists of two directions, the inward and the outward direction we saw on the screen before. The same project is not mandatory, but yeah, obviously you can link issues between several projects as well as different instances or across different instances as well. This is shown by the different issue keys on that screen. How does it look like in the tool? There's a dedicated link issues section where the links are grouped by their link type. And as you see here already, those links are not unique when it comes to direction. So for example, you can even build some kind of deadlock situation. So this issue here blocks Kanban 14, but is also blocked by Kanban 14. First, you get the first idea that there is no actual logic behind adding those links, but it's put in the hands of the users to actually bring meaning to those. Last but not least, there is JQL functionality, so you can do or write queries like issue and linked issues and an issue key. However, this is restricted to a single issue key. So you can just you cannot I don't know, put subqueries in here. You would need additional third-party apps for that as well. But finding issues linked to a dedicated or a specific issue is possible within the issue navigator. But that's basically it. So there's no, as I said before, there's no business logic within those issue link relationships. It's a pointer with a descriptive name, hopefully, no more, no less. That said, by default, there is no actual meaning inside those links. So blockers don't actually block other issues. Same goes for I don't know, descriptive links like has to be done before. This is a link that then reads has to be done before. But by default, there is that has no effect on several due dates or whatever. And this has to be put into the workflows or into your processes by usually by adding third-party tools. Bringing us to the first example on how this can be done smarter when you involve third-party apps. And the first example that we are going to look at is that users must not put an issue from the backlog into to-do when there is still an unresolved blocking issue. So this is dealing with process quality. And if we jump into this little video, we see a story that blocks 2 issues, the Scrum one and default one, both within the status backlog. For the default bug, the status then can be changed as desired, and the issue can even be resolved and set to done. So there is no effect due to this issue link. And for the smart task, changing the status is not allowed, and the user is presented a corresponding message that the transition failed, and that the user must not change the status until the blocking issue is resolved, and only when resolving that blocking issue, this task can be set to done, or the work on that issue can be started as well. So one small guidance or one small improvement for the end user. Bringing us to the second example, where an issue, so when an issue caused by another issue is resolved, there should be an automated update on the causing issue. So while the first example was focusing on guidance, this one here is now actually doing something. Again, a small video. We have a task which is pending due to an unresolved bug this issue has caused. In this scenario, no transitions are available by default. And only now when we mark the bug ticket as done, we see 2 small effects that we have added to this example. So after a short refresh, so this relies on Jira itself. But once we do a small refresh, the window won't refresh automatically. We see that first the status has been changed to do, and the issue can now be worked on, as well as the automated comment that has been added to this ticket in order to send notifications to potential stakeholders. Jumping over to hierarchy levels, which has been split up into 2 parts for today. So the first part, to start with, we will talk about epics and stories. And to begin with, the epic issue type is automatically created when using and installing Jira software. So it's a unique issue type. There's no manual creation. And it's usually understood as an issue type for a big user story that needs to be broken down. With the epic come different custom fields like the epic color, the link name, or the epic status. You should distinguish between the actual workflow status of the workflow of the epic and the epic status, which can be changed to mark as done, for example, in the board view. And most of those fields are editable in the epics panel in the board or the backlog. Second part is the story, often used for actual user stories. And in a more general manner, you could talk about this one or this relationship as being an epic child relationship. So it doesn't have to be a story, but can also be a standard issue type. And like the issue links, we want to take a closer look into the relationship between the 2. Epics can contain multiple stories or issues. The epic link custom field is the one that controls this relationship. It can be used for JQL searches as well. The same project isn't as well as the issue links is not mandatory. So epics can be in different projects like the stories or the issues attached to. And other issue types can be added to epics as well. So for example, bugs, tasks, you name it. Usually you can build these relationships in 2 ways. You can use the create issue in epic button or the functionality browsing an epic issue. So this would be the top-down one. Or you set the epic link field we shown before on the actual story issue or task, which would then be the bottom-up approach. Besides, when it comes to business logic again, there isn't that much of functionality again. So we have reports. So epics are tracked, can be tracked in the epic report or the epic burndown. But again, that's basically it when it comes to included business logic. So there is no shared configuration. There is no sophisticated business logic. The epic status, for example, has to be updated manually. There is no connection between workflows. So, for example, by default, there's no top-down approach. So if you cancel an epic, all the stories are canceled, or all the stories are moved to another epic, something like this. Everything has to be done on a manual basis, as well as no propagation of field values. Again, we want to look at a couple of examples showing how this can be improved or what's actually possible when building meaningful relationships or moving over to smart workflows. First example here we're going to look at is that users must not start progress of an epic when there are no issues in the epic. So usually, there is no logic like this. So Jira itself won't block you or won't stop you from starting progress on an issue, which should only be a large user story without having no issues or without having any issues in that epic. So given an epic with no stories available, on the top you only see an initial link. By default, I can change the status as desired, start progress, and even set the epic to done without having an issue inside that epic. Looking at our smart epic now, when trying to start progress here, the transition fails, and the message is displayed to the users with a hint that why the transition fails. And once I now start adding issues in the epic, at least one issue in this case, the transition can be run successfully, and I can actually start working on the epic. Another example, when an epic is canceled, all the issues in this epic should be canceled automatically. So this is now again the more automation side or process automation part. Again, we'll start with a look at the default functionality. And given an epic with 2 stories attached that have not been resolved yet, canceling the epic now does this exclusively with no automated changes passed on to the stories. They have to be canceled manually then as well. A small task, but that task that has to be remembered by the actual user performing that operation. Heading over to our smart epic with a similar condition, canceling this epic, again, after a little page refresh, cancels the related stories as well and takes this burden or takes this manual effort away from the actual user. Obviously, you can specify what should happen if you just want to cancel all the epics, if you want to move them, the stories. You have to adapt this one to your processes. Another example we want to have a short look is this: when an epic moves to selected for development, we should create a story for each component selected. So this again is to reduce manual effort, and if the processes we work involve splitting up work into several work packages, which is where the epic and story relationship comes into place. I might want to hand over this issue creation or story creation over to Jira if it follows the same pattern every now and then. Given an epic where we first select different components and then, if configured correctly, Jira can do the otherwise manual work of creating a dedicated story for each selected component when the status changes for selected for development. So again, a little page refresh. And what we see here, that in the background, the automation is triggered and it's starting to create stories for every component selected, a task that otherwise, again, should have or must have been done or performed on a manual basis. Okay, which leads us to the second part of hierarchy levels, tasks and subtasks. Starting with the task, that often is referred to that way since it's part of the default schemes or terminology in Jira. But basically the following applies to any standard issue type. And in that relationship or in that analysis, this is often referred to as the parent. The second part then is the subtask, which can be again disabled globally. And the same like for this task supply, there can be multiple subtask issue types with different names that can be added to your Jira instance, which again leads us to the relationship between the two. The relationship is maintained by the so-called parent link custom field, which can be used for JQL searches as well. It's not on the edit screen since changing the parent is actually done by doing a change parent move operation. So since it's more special, or it's a little bit tighter than the Epic Store relationship, which means that it's a more sophisticated change than just changing that field. It's a bit closer than Epic and Story, as I said before. While a story can, for example, exist without an Epic, for a subtask, a parent is mandatory. That said, the same project key is mandatory as well. So a subtask can only be present in the same project as the parent. And the creation of subtask can be done in different ways. You can create a subtask within a task. You can convert an issue to a subtask, or you convert subtasks to standard issues as well. Deleting a parent also deletes the subtasks. And if you move a parent and there is no subtask issue type available in the target project, Jira prompts you to that you have that there is no subtask issue type available, and you have to choose another project. So it's, as I said before, it's a little bit of a tighter integration than the ones between epics and stories. A little bit of configuration is shared as well. So for example, the security level can only be maintained on the parent basis. So setting a security level on the parent automatically sets the same security level on all of the subtasks. There cannot be any difference, or you cannot maintain, or you cannot edit security level on a subtask level. But again, besides that, there is no actual connection between workflows. Again, this whole automation stuff like canceling an issue top-down and canceling all the subtasks, or when resolving all the subtasks, resolving the task as well, the bottom-up approach isn't there by default, as well as there is no propagation of field values besides this time tracking view, where you can say that you want to include the subtasks on an issue view. Again, we want to look at a couple of examples of how this can be optimized, or how that can look when moving over to smarter workflows. The first example shows how it can be done, or how the process looks when users must not close tasks with unresolved subtasks. Let's look at the direct comparison again. Given a default task with 2 subtasks, changing the task to done is first allowed, as well as having no consequences for the subtask. You're closing the task, but nothing else happens. Switching over again to the smart task, where we have also 2 subtasks open. While starting progress might still be possible, marking the task as done is not possible with the corresponding message shown again, transition fails. And only once all the subtasks are resolved, the task can be set to done as well. Again, process quality. Another example, this was now the process quality approach. We now have a look at some kind of bottom-up automation. So when all subtasks are resolved, we resolve the parent issue automatically. Given a task with 2 open subtasks, one still in progress and one within QA, our last example already showed how the task itself can be made smarter by adding additional logic to the different status transitions, etc., the one to done. And this example, as I said before, is now the bottom-up approach. and the fact that all subtasks are done should result in the task being done as well. Doing so, as well as the small refresh. We already got used to this one. Yes, closing or marking the other one is done as well. Refreshing the page now shows that the users can save this additional effort of having to close the task on her or his own as well. So much for today's examples that, again, should only serve you as appetizers. So I'll try to conclude with general pieces of advice that might help on your way to build meaningful relationships within your Jira instance. Due to the generic approach of this session, a one-fits-all blueprint is hard to recommend because obviously all of those stuff has to match your processes. Your specific best practice approach to implement the examples provided on your system depends on the hosting option as well as the apps available to you. For this presentation, obviously our app Jira Workflow Toolbox was used. When it comes to the benefits of building meaningful relationships, you can narrow that list down to 2 major blocks. Increased guidance by adding sophisticated conditions and validators placed within the workflows, which requires Jira administrator permission, and depending on the hosting option, partly included. For example, the subtask blocking condition is available on Jira Cloud by default. However, mainly through third-party apps capable of interpreting Jira expressions for Jira Cloud and or providing additional conditions and validators for Jira Server and Data Center, you can highly improve or highly extend this guidance part within your workflows. The second block is then to decrease the manual effort of your users with sophisticated post functions that usually require a third-party app. Once placed within, or if you place, in order to place post functions within your workflows, you again need Jira administrator permission. However, within Jira Cloud, there are, or there have been added the automation rules features on the project or on a global level within the last couple of months. Due to the time limit, we obviously only had the chance to actually look at some simple examples, but which can already have a big impact. So even more complex scenarios are doable. If you can think it, you usually can do it. For example, that you want to ensure that all linked issues with a certain issue link have the due dates field set, etc. You can, just highly flexible, combine the requirements that actually fit you and your processes. So that's for the scripted part. Thank you very much for watching. That's it for now. And I'm looking forward to the Q&A session. Handing over to my colleague Christian with the questions you've posted in the meantime.
Good morning, and thank you, Thorsten, for this powerful presentation. And we do have some interesting questions coming in. And there was one that I even had to ask a question afterwards. So we generally see that the relationship sometimes messes up the architecture and the user access process. What's the smarter way of what you would recommend in a grown environment? So I asked what was meant by user access, and said user access to know such relationship between, like a parent link, how that relation can be done in an efficient manner, then maybe that's better than the traditional one in Jira that Jira already offers. Would you have a thought on that?
So as I already said on my conclusion slides, while there might be a couple of don'ts that are quite easy to recommend, there usually remain several do's or several approaches that are completely valid for your and your scenarios, given the requirements you have now, which might not be the requirements you have in the future. The user access part is obviously a quite important one, because what I personally saw starting as a consultant is that people expect things to happen in the background by default. So if I link two issues together using a blocking link, for example, and say, okay, issue A blocks issue B, the expectation at first from the users or from a larger user base, not everyone, is that this has an impact. The same applies for the subtask and parent relationship. It's like on many other levels in your business and private life. It's a theme of expectations, and what's really important there is, in order to raise acceptance for all of your users, especially when starting new in Jira, is to be quite transparent when it comes to what the tool does and what the tool is capable of doing when extending stuff. I would always recommend starting with the defaults just to get familiar with all the other stuff that comes within Jira, the terminology, etc. But once you get going, and if you have once you have worked within the tool for the first couple of weeks or month, those automations, obviously in cooperation with the teams or with their departments, can really further improve acceptance for the tool within your company. And then then Jira, for example, actually provides, at least from my perspective, a lot more of additional value for your processes. Is this where the question was heading to, or have I totally missed the spot?
I guess that was going to the right direction. So there was one that's kind of referring to the slides that you pulled up. So what's the best approach to building the systems, bottom up or top down, or does it depend on the project type?
I would not say that it depends on the project type, but actually, on the way you work. Building bottom up and building top down, I think, are not two approaches that have to exclude each other. So as we saw in the examples as well, I think they can live in parallel. However, one general piece of advice is automate only the stuff that is qualified for being automated. Speaking of automating your workflows shouldn't it shouldn't result in that way that it saves you a little bit of time 9 out of 10 times, but the 10th time being a special case then makes so much additional manual effort to get the issues back on track that all the time savings are gone. In general, so don't look at the project type, look at the teams, look at how the teams work. In general, this is probably the hardest part, it's a good approach to agree on similar automations or similar processes on a company level. The usual way is that we start in distinct teams, and every team or every team lead sees things a little bit differently, which might come to, or which might result into one team more or less building the bottom-up approach, the other team building the top-down approach. However, the actual major task is then to find a conclusion and to level, or to put everything on a similar level on a company base, because usually, although people or teams starting within their own projects or within their own teams, the main benefits or the main power of Jira lies into cross-functional or cross-project work, and usually it's only a question of weeks or months before this starts. And if you then have not agreed on a common terminology or common behaviors within workflows, things can get really hard.
All right, thank you for answering that. You mentioned automation, and I think that kind of goes into, that plays into the next question. Is there any way to create a relationship between field values to determine another field's value?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. It's totally worth having a look at the feature set as well as the long list of examples that are out there in order to get inspired of what is actually doable. So I don't know, changing a priority in issue A should, for example, just result in this priority copied over to another issue, or result in, I don't know, even changing statuses on other issues. So the possibilities are quite endless. As I said before, in Jira Cloud, all of those things are now included. Being on-prem, you still need an additional third-party app, like, for example, our Jira Full Toolbox or the automation for Jira feature as well. But there, yeah, you can trigger, or you can work with so-called triggers that listen for field changes. And after that, you can do stuff. So you actually say the tool, you tell the tool, listen to that field change, and now do something. For example, copy that field value over to other issues, add comments, create other issues, transition other issues, send an email, notify people. So yeah, I think that the main part, or the quite problematic part here, is that, and we have this as a small mantra within our team, working on Work for Toolbox. We say, okay, if that what you are trying to do follows a logical way, we are for 99% capable of doing so, or implementing this part of functionality within the tool. Of course, it has to follow a logical way. Yeah, if that's the case, listening to field changes, for example, is a quite easy and small part of the functionality that is out there.
All right, thank you. So there's another question right on that topic. We might push that out a bit. Well, could you please highlight the key difference between your apps and those many other existing solutions? I think that's exactly, I mean, automation part is one of those examples that's included in JWT. I might push that out a bit, because there's going to be a smart workflows breakout session after this, right after this talk, where Torsten will be able to even showcase stuff and go into the configuration. So time that we don't have in this talk.
Yeah.
So I'll focus on two more questions that we have here. So do you have any option to add additional levels, not only epic, story, or subtask? I think you kind of mentioned that slightly, but you might want to reiterate over that one.
Yeah, so again, and nothing is more constant than changes. I think it's the term we have in Germany. So being, and this has not been included in today's talk. I might include it in this presentation for future events. But obviously, Jira itself now provides advanced roadmaps where you can add additional levels, like, for example, create initiatives, and build more levels of that kind of hierarchies. It uses a similar approach like the parent subtask, the parent-child relationship for task and subtask, using some kind of parent level. So the functionality is quite similar. However, it's obviously a little bit more complex, because we don't only have level A and B, but it can be level A, B, C, D, you name it. Those are available for cloud and data center as well. And for example, and obviously we as a vendor for Workflow Tools are, once those new features come up, are working hardly to support those on an immediate manner. And for example, for data center, we just released a new version that is capable of accessing all of those levels and building sophisticated automations, or building sophisticated conditions validators, taking all those levels into consideration as well. But yeah, advanced roadmaps might be the default functionality that you will want to look after.
Sweet, thank you. So I do have one more, and if you
I think
want, let's
still
say
good in
to,
time. Yeah.
yeah, we still have a couple more minutes. If you want to enforce
Mm.
strong relationship, which method would you prefer? So is it subtask appearance or epics and regular issue links?
Strong, yeah. Depends on if you want to rely on default functionality. I think as we saw, the strongest relationship might be the parent and child one, or the task and subtask one. However, if you are open, or if you have additional apps at hand in order to tighten up your processes, I think you can. Yeah, there is no real. There's no real one-stop shop to go to, because you can build everything around an epic and story relationship, as well as an issue link relationship that is then as tight as you need it, for example, or as close as you need it. But on the default side, it's probably the task and subtask one. But if you are open to edit workflows, etc., I think it doesn't matter. Or you're open to actually choose what you want, or the level of granularity you need. So just to do a general wrap up of the whole session. Thank you very much for your attention, and as well as this the high engagement during the Q&A. You should make sure to reach out to me or our team, for example, Christian, through the channels provided. Being a silver sponsor, come to our booth, and you'll have links to our website and other accounts as well, being able to actually make some appointments. You can find me through the speaker profile or the booth staff listing. Some of our colleagues are also there and happy to talk to you about our apps. I can only say check out the other great talks that are still to come. For I think the last quarter of the JiraCon. As I said before, if you want to pick right up where we left off now, or we have to leave now, I look forward to seeing you again in the Smart Workflows breakout session, starting right after the upcoming break. And I think lastly, I can only thank Trundl, Jaxo, X-Ray for hosting that really cool event. It's been really fun so far. And I think a special shout out to Patrick and Aaron, who might have not slept that much in the last couple of days. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Christian. And if you want to join us, head over to the Smart Workflows breakout session after a small break. Bye-bye.